Hey, ladies. Well, I am so excited to introduce Mandy Ralph to you. She is a friend that I have met since joining Plexus. And Mandy, how long have you been with Plexus?
This go around will be 5 years in April.
5 years. Okay. Very good. Well, I'm
Mm,
going to let
scratch that.
you.
It'll be six. Sorry.
That's okay. I'm just hitting my anniversary, my Plexus anniversary. So I have to change my brain too.
Yeah.
Well, I will let you just take it away, share your testimony, and I'm excited to hear more about your story.
All right. Well, again, thank you for having me. I love sharing my Plexus testimony. So when I said that I had, it'll be 6 years in April, my second time go around. So I actually started Plexus probably 7 or 8 years ago. And somebody posted, stomach issues. I was like, oh, that's me. So I clicked join and I started and I felt better, but I was real deep into going to my endocrinologist and making sure my labs were okay because I've had Hashimoto's for 15 years.
Wow.
And when I back when I started the first time and I went in, she was like, your thyroid numbers look pretty bad. Let's do some biopsies. Let's look at your nodules. And she did. And she was like, oh, I think it's okay. We're not going to worry about them. Well, a day later, she calls me and she was like, we think you have cancer. And so we need to do further testing. Well, even though I'm a nurse practitioner, I don't like needles and was not excited to think about having more biopsies done. So I was like, you're going to put me to sleep, like pure and simple. That's it. So she did. And the surgeon called me and he was like, it's not, you don't have cancer. You just have such an overgrowth on these nodules that they're just not working the way they're supposed to. Well, my medical mind was, what have I done? What have I done to disrupt my medication? Like, what have I started? And the only thing I could contribute to was like, I didn't know anything about the products. Who signed me up didn't tell me anything. Just take it. That was her answer. So I quit my products and I was like, it's got to be that. Like, I blamed Plexus. And for about a couple of years, I was just miserable. Like, my labs were getting worse. My thyroid was draining. I was tired. My hair's falling out. My kids were mad at me all the time because I was grouchy. My husband's like, you're just irritable. And so I had something to blame it on. Like, oh, I have Hashimoto's. I was diagnosed when our youngest was 5 years old. She'll be 20 in October or November. And I didn't realize what Hashimoto's was. I didn't realize it was an autoimmune disease. I didn't realize her being diagnosed at 5 years old with vitiligo, where she doesn't have pigment on her skin, that was because of me. I had no clue, didn't put it together through all my nursing knowledge, no clue. And I was like, well, where does poor little kid come up with vitiligo? And her answer was, well, Jesus made me that way. And I was like, well, you're right. I can't argue with you on this. But then I soon realized it was because I carried the autoimmune disease that, looking back, my grandmother has, my great grandmother has. And it was just this inherited trait. And I was like, well, I have something to blame. Just keep taking more medicine. Just keep taking Tylenol PM to sleep. Don't worry about your constipation. That's just how it is. Just drink more coffee. You'll be awake. You don't worry about if you go out to dinner with your husband, where's the next bathroom? Because if you don't have constipation, then you have diarrhea. Like, all the things. And I was just miserable for about a year and a half. And so right when I got home from Haiti on a mission trip, I looked at my husband and I was like, I'm horrible. Like, I just feel something isn't right. She tells me my values are okay, but I just don't feel good. And so I just clicked join, didn't join anybody, just signed back up, started using my products. And about 4 months into it, I had people were going, what have you done differently? Like, you seem happier, you have more energy, you're doing great, you're losing weight. And I was like, I don't know, drinking this pink drink. Still did not put two and two together what I was taking. So the more I dug into the research and realized how much it really does reduce that inflammation and balance out your hormones and balance out your blood sugar. And my stomach started feeling better. And then I thought, I didn't eat a whole box of Hostess cupcakes this Friday night. That was my crutch. I would run down to the Dollar General. I'd buy a box of 8, they come in 8, and I'd eat 7. And I'd give one to my husband sometimes. Sometimes I would hide it for later, but I would sit and eat 7 Hostess cupcakes and not bat an eye because my sweet tooth was just out of whack. I was addicted to coffee. It was all morning during my practice. When I got home, that was my, here I can go to the bathroom. Here I can stay awake. Let's just take more Tylenol PM. Let's add in more sleep aids. And every time I'd go back to the endocrinologist, she's like, your labs look great. Like your labs are fine. It's just because you're getting older. And I was like, I'm only gonna be 40. I'm not that old. And she was like, well, you're just getting older. You're just gonna have to suck it up. And I was like, this is just not how life is supposed to be. So I dug more into the products and I started with the triplex and I kept on it for 4 months. That's all I took. Regardless, consistent every day. I started increasing my water. I started noticing I was sleeping better. I started noticing that I was getting up refreshed. And I was like, okay, there's something to this. It took me probably, honestly, over a year to take a picture of myself. And it was a picture of me and our middle daughter in the Bahamas in bikinis. And I compared it to the one prior to that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is only 4 months on the products. What's it going to do if I continue using this? No, not only am I looking better, I'm losing that bloating feeling. I'm losing that puffy feeling from having Hashimoto's because, you're full of inflamed. Your face just looks round and fat. You just feel like crud all the time. And so I just kept on and I kept on. It'd be 3 years ago in February, I went back into my endocrinologist because I was still going yearly. She still kept telling me my nodules hadn't changed. She still kept telling me my labs were okay. And I was kind of getting frustrated to the point I was like, I don't want to be on medicine. She's like, well, you're going to have to be the rest of your life. And I was like, no, there's got to be a better way. I was like, I've been taking these products. This is what's in them. Are you okay with it? And she's like, I don't know anything about it, but there's nothing in it that's going to jeopardize your health or your medicine. So if you want to use it, you can try it and just see what happens. Okay. So I come home and I was like, I really went off my medicine. And she said, we'll go every other day. Let's try that. It's like, okay. So I went every other day. Well, then I am a really bad nurse practitioner. I just kind of quit because I was tired of feeling like poo. So I just stopped. And it'll be 3 years in February when I went in there. She looked at me and she did my labs and she said, your medicine's doing great. And I laughed at her. And she's like, what? And I was like, I haven't been on my meds in a year. And she said, what? I said, I hadn't taken them at all in a year. She's like, you've lost 25 pounds. I was like, I know. And she was like, what have you done? And I said, I started counting my macros and realizing with a poor thyroid, you need more protein and less carbs. So I had to give up my cupcakes. Not that I don't eat one every now and then, but I don't sit down and eat a box of 8. I said, I increased my protein because I am now 46. So that's, as we age, we need more protein in our diet. So I said, I've added more protein. I've watched my fat. I've cut down my carbs. I do try to eat some gluten-free if I can, not always, because it just tears my stomach up. But I've been taking these products and I've been medicine-free for a year. And she said, your labs have never looked better. You actually are in a stable, normal thyroid state. And in 15 years, I've never had a normal, stable thyroid panel. So she's like, but we're going to look at those nodules because I guarantee it, you're going to need your medicine. Like, okay, I'll please you. So we went, she does the ultrasound, she measures it up. She goes, they've shrank. And I was like, yeah. She's like, no, like significantly have shrank. And I just kind of smiled at her and I was like, I mean, everything I'm doing is batting that inflammation. That's why the nodules grow. It's white cells on top of your nodules. They grow, they get inflamed, your thyroid doesn't work. If I get rid of that, my thyroid's working properly, I look better, I feel better, and my nodules have shrank. And she says, you'll be back in a year for your medicine. I guarantee it. I haven't seen her in 3 years. And every year I have my labs ran. I have my doctor sends them off for me. And every year they have come back as a normal thyroid panel, like what you see textbook normal thyroid. And every year I just see her and I smile. And I'm like, I don't need my medicine anymore. And she was amazed. She was like, going from knowing that you might have cancer to complete remission with values that are just textbook normal. She was like, the only thing I can contribute it to is what you've been taking. And I was
Mm.
like, I'm a firm believer. I mean, it's all plant-based. It is gluten-free. It reduces that. But once I started healing my gut, then I realized everything else kind of fell into line. And so she was like, whatever you've done, just keep doing, because obviously you look fantastic. Obviously your labs are great. And she was like, I would never have thought that this would have been your outcome. They really thought I was heading down like chemo and radiation and surgeries and more medicine. And I said, I just don't want to live in the fog. I don't take anything for sleep now. I don't have to, you know, be the slave to coffee. You know, like I said, I can eat basically what I want. I do try to eat clean. I do try to put in more protein than I do my carbs, just because, again, I'm getting older and I need more of that. But my consistent regimen for 5 years has been the triplex. Hands down, never miss a day. The cleanse, the probio, and the slim. What I've found, and now that when I do share as well, I am an ambassador like Kayleen. And so when I do share, if people have Hashimoto's, I always tell them the X Factor Plus is fantastic because it's got a great support and we don't absorb like we should. But my other love is ease, because it has a huge factor in getting rid of that inflammation. And I think when I paired that with my triplex, I think that was my kicker to really get those nodules to just, you know, go more euthyroid, as they call it. I know Miss Kayleen asked me about some other products that I use. I love MetaBurn just because it does give an added boost to the thyroid. Also, you know, I'm a mom of 3. I carry the baby weight. I would love, you know, to get that belly fat off, and it's a great boost for the thyroid. I will drink an active every now and then. I don't have to have it. Because I am pushing 47, I do throw the Mega X at bedtime just for, you know, more heart health and for cholesterol checks. And then of course I love our new sleep product. Like that's my husband and I's hands down new product. Like that's just been tremendous for sleep. But that's been my regimen for 5 years. Triplex every day, threw in the X Factor Plus, and then threw in Ease as well. And those are things I just don't ever miss. And so for me, it's totally changed my life because now I don't have any medications. I'm not paying for prescription medicines. I don't have to go live at Starbucks every day. So I could get through seeing patients. You know, as a nurse practitioner, I see about 35 every day. And so it's a very busy office. And so to keep me going, that's what I would live on. And then I'd hit a wall. And so to be able to go to work and not have that and come home and be energized till 10 or 11 at night, for my kids who are all adults are like, Mom, you're happy. Like you're dancing in the kitchen. This isn't our mom. Like you're out having a good time and you're laughing and you're cutting up and you're more loving and you're more free. And what have you done? And I'm like, it's all been Plexus, like pure and simple. These products have really just nailed it down for me. So that's my regimen that I've used to combat my Hashimoto's.
Wow, that's incredible. That's my story. I mean, everyone's obviously story is a little bit different as far as Hashimoto's. I think Shannon, you kind of answered her questions. I want to make sure she answers both of them. I think it was about the gluten and dairy. So you don't do completely gluten dairy free, then you just kind of cut on gluten. Right?
I do, like if because I hired a macro counting coach a few years ago to kind of help me with my health. And so that's where my protein came in. And that's when I realized when my protein is higher, I actually do feel better. And so as we were doing coaching a couple of years ago, she actually started taking my dairy out. And the one that kicked me was like yogurt. Like I love Greek protein yogurt. So now I love cheese. I've never been a milk drinker anyways. It just always irritated me. I don't like ice cream. I'm just a weird person, I guess, but I just don't eat as much.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, because it was because of that too. I just don't eat as much dairy. If I have an option, like, I don't know, if I go get a pizza or a sandwich and they have the cauliflower or gluten-free crust, I will opt for one of those just because I know when I leave, if I have a pizza, which I love, I'm going to feel it later because I can feel just the ugh feeling in your gut, you know? Yeah. But I don't buy all gluten-free stuff. I don't usually eat bread, so I don't worry about that. It's not like I go out and buy the corn versus flour or cook with it or anything. I just try and limit my intake of it.
Gotcha. Okay. And then you talked about the products as far as what you take. And then I have a question about, so you have three kids, you said, right? And
Yes.
did you had Hashimoto's with all three? Or was it with your, I forget what you said was after.
My Yeah, my oldest will be 26 in January, and then I'll have a 23-year-old, and then I'll have a 20-year-old, and then I have a new grandbaby coming. So I'm so excited.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. When my son was born, I started noticing like my stomach just acted weird. Like I couldn't eat what I could, and I was like, "Where's the bathroom?" Like I'm just, it's bad. But I didn't, I was 20, 21 years old. So I was like, I didn't really pay attention. It was when our youngest was born, my third one. She was 5 years old and she was sitting, we went to McDonald's, and I kept looking at her face and I was like wiping her face. She's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "You got something on your face." She's like, "No, I'm not." And it is this white mark all through here. And I was like, "What is that?" And so I took her to a dermatologist and he was like, "Oh, she has vitiligo." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, she just doesn't have pigment in her face. Who in your family has it?" I had no clue. I'm like, I don't know. And so he was like, "Well, someone has an autoimmune disease because this is stemmed from it." And I was like, "Well, maybe I should have my thyroid checked." I was gaining weight. And that, in my mind, was if my thyroid's off, I'll lose weight. That's why I checked it. And when
Mm,
she checked it, she told me, she was like, "You actually have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You
mm,
need to take these medicines. You are the reason why your daughter has the vitiligo." And I was like, oh, light bulb moment. My grandmother had Hashimoto's. My great grandmother had vitiligo. Now I see the pattern. And
mm.
now my cousin, my maternal cousin, is the same way. Her and her son are the same way. So I
Oh,
did not put two and two together. So it was actually from her when she was 5. She'll be 20 in November. And now you can't even tell. When she tans like I do, she looks at the sun, she just has a beautiful golden tan. You
hmm.
don't even see it anymore. It's like she kind of outgrew it. It's very
Oh,
interesting. Yeah.
that is interesting.
Yeah.
So, like for me, all of my issues were postpartum. Like prior to having kids, I didn't experience a lot of symptoms other than just tiredness. So that's why I was asking because I feel like my flare ups or my tough seasons are always after I have kids. And that's
Mhm.
where I was telling Kayleen, I don't know if there's something more going on because for me, it was like the weight loss, not the weight gain, and more than I needed to. And so I didn't know if there was like lupus or something else going on besides, because I know when you have one autoimmune, you tend to have another. And so my question was going to be, did you have another kid after taking the plexus supplements and have any problems postpartum? But technically it was after all your kids.
It was
Okay.
after all my kids. Now, I wish I had found plexus when I had my babies, just because of the benefits it gives the baby, and just because of
Yeah.
my friends who've had it prior, during, and then after. Like with my daughter-in-law pregnant, I'm like, stick with your products. I'm telling you, I wish I'd had these with our babies.
Yeah.
But no, unfortunately, my baby will be 20. So
Okay.
I wish I had had that. But, even back then, I didn't even pay attention. I just thought, oh, I'm pregnant. I'm just tired. Now, I
Right.
will say I've had some stressors in my life, because adult children are adult children. I've still had some stressors in my life where I do feel like I've had a flare up of my Hashimoto's, but I
Yeah.
really think because I've kept my baseline even with my triplex, that flare up was not nearly as bad as it would have been had I not had it. Because I've
Mm,
been able to sail through a lot of stuff recently, and it's not, I mean, it's phased me, but it has not like physically worn me down, if that
gotcha.
makes sense. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I can just, my husband's like, wow, that's something in the past that really would have just knocked you out, not only
Right.
emotionally, but just drained you with your thyroid. And he was like, "You've really done well." And I said, "I think it's because I've kept my balance of my hormones and my sugars even, that I've kept it all down, that I don't have that extra feeding the sugar in my system, causing it to flare up." Yeah.
Yeah. And so you just cut back on like, did you cut out complete all of your sugar or did you just cut back tremendously?
I've cut back tremendously, but I will say it wasn't a lot of choice. It was really because I don't crave it. Like
Oh,
like I said, I can go eat a cupcake. I mean, I can go down here Dollar General and buy me a box, but it would take me forever to eat one because they're so sweet now.
oh,
Or I gave up Cokes and Diet Cokes probably 10 years ago just because the health benefits. But even if I go get coffee, I drink it black now, which is huge because my coffee was not dark. My coffee was cream and sugar. And
Yeah.
now it's way too sweet. And it's not because I don't want it. It's just, well, I don't want it. I just don't have that drive to eat that much sugar. Or I'll fix, I do dinners every Sunday for my family. I cook homemade every Sunday. And so I always make a dessert. And I usually don't even touch it. And they're like, don't you want it? I'm like, oh, I would love to. It just doesn't even sound good anymore. And it's not a deprived, it's just, I just don't need it like I used to.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, it's been huge. I mean, I have my husband on it. He don't have thyroid issues, but I've got him off all his energy drinks. And now if he has one, he can't even finish them because he's like, these are way too sweet. I can't drink this. How did I drink this before? And I'm like, that was my question,
Yeah.
So it just really, since you balance out that blood sugar, it just really makes a huge difference in what you do crave, and then what you want for your food as well. Yeah.
Right. Huh. So interesting. So you have to go. So I just want to say thank you for.
I'm good. I got a few minutes. If you need to finish, I have a few minutes. They're not quite here yet.
Okay. I think you answered all my questions anyways. I was going to ask about hereditary, if it runs in your family. You kind of already answered that because my mom has it and her thyroid is fully dependent on the medication now. And that's what I'm trying to avoid. And so I feel like now's the time to start these products and get off the medication, hopefully. And so hearing that and your story is incredible. And that's what I'm hoping.
And I've had some people say, well, how quick did you get off of it? And honestly, like I said, it'll be 6 years in April that I started back on my products. I will be medicine free for 3. So it didn't happen overnight. It happened over a period of time. And it really, with my endocrinologist, of course, she's a doctor. What do we want to do? We want to keep feeding that. It was her saying, we'll go every other day. And it honestly, just to me, was like, why? So I was the one that kind of came off of it. And so I've had people ask me that, and I'm like, I really shouldn't tell you that I did that, but I did, because I'm just not a good nurse. I don't like Tylenol. I don't want to take ibuprofen. Like, I just don't want to take the medications. But it did not happen overnight. It did take some time to really, I think, heal everything that was going on for all those years. And then once I started seeing the light and feeling better, then I was like, I don't need this medicine anymore. I don't want to keep taking it. And so that's how I kind of stopped. But it was a process.
Your numbers were normal while you were on it though, even with Plexus products, or were they?
My numbers were normal for my TSH would run down around 1, under 1, and she was happy with that. When I say they're normal now, textbook normal is like a 3. That's where I sit. I'm in a euthyroid. I am in a normal textbook. My lab last check was like 3.01. I've never fallen in that line ever.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
So when she first diagnosed me, my numbers were real high. Those numbers were off. She brought me on the medicine. She's like, well, you seem pretty good around the 1 mark. I'm like, I might have a little energy, but I still looked like I have Hashimoto's. I still like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I was still puffy. I was still joints hurting. My numbers to you look good on paper, but that's not how I felt. So now when I say my numbers are normal, my lab is like 3, like a perfect normal thyroid number.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because there's a large, so I feel like there's a range and they don't care as long as you're in that range. So
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so, that's been my whole thyroid issue, and so when I started the products, I started just because I wanted to feel better, obviously, and then people started noticing, and I was like, these people need to know how I feel, because this whole opportunity was not on my radar. I was like, I don't need this. I'm a nurse practitioner, whatever. Well, then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm here to help people. God gave me this to do this for his people. And so I do share the opportunity. I do share my products now. And it has been amazing because I have so many people who've had thyroid problems now say, I've been able to decrease my meds, or I've been able to do this. And I'm like, yes. So the entire realm has been such a blessing for me and my family, besides meeting great people like Kayleen too.
Yes, she is great. Well, thank you so much. You're
welcome.
So I'm excited to see how it will affect my journey as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. I'll be excited to hear how it goes too. That's awesome.
And I'm thinking over time, you said was it the E's that you introduced eventually, right? It
I
was
did. Yes. So my triplex was regardless. And then I did the X Factor Plus vitamins. And then I threw in the E's. And that is usually what I do tell people now these days. I'm like, I would throw E's on regardless because you see a better result, but it's great at getting that real heavy inflammation down. And I think that was my kicker to throw me into good numbers. I do believe that. Yeah.
Good to know.
Yep.
Thank you so much, ladies, for hopping on. I'm glad it worked out.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll see ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.